You've heard the phrase, right? Someone says they're losing their mind. We use it all the time, but for centuries, that phrase meant something absolutely terrifying and final. So let's dig into what it once meant and how our whole understanding of mental health has been turned completely upside down.
For hundreds of years, this was the accepted truth. Mental illness wasn't something you could bounce back from. Nope, it was a one-way street. Like a part of you was just gone, forever. I mean, what a truly frightening way to see things.
But here's the thing. That old belief, it's just completely wrong. We now understand mental health in a totally different and honestly a much more hopeful way. The story isn't about some kind of permanent loss. It's about a process. All right, so let's officially bust this myth wide open. We're going to take apart that old, scary, historical view and put a much more accurate picture in its place. And the contrast is, well, it's pretty stark. The old fear was this idea of a one-way path to just falling apart. But the new reality, the one backed by actual science, shows that most mental illness is an episode that, for most people, goes away. Recovery isn't some rare miracle. It's the norm. So to really get this new reality, we need a whole new metaphor. Let's stop thinking of insanity as some final destination. Instead, we need to see illness as a moving picture. It's a process, not some fixed, static state you're stuck in. And this idea is so key. A diagnosis, or just a description of someone's symptoms at one particular moment, that's just a snapshot. It's a single frame in a long movie. It tells you nothing about where that person came from, and more importantly, it doesn't tell you where they're going next. Life and illness with it is always in motion. So what does that motion, that process of getting better, actually look like? Well, a lot of the time, it starts with the tiniest things. A patient might just give a nod or maybe a faint smile, and then you'll see their posture relax a bit. They start looking around, curious. Then they might start to speak and then actually express what they want. And slowly, step by step, they re-engage with the world and start to find pleasure in things again. It's this gradual reconnection. But, and this is a big but, that path isn't always a straight line. Sometimes the journey to getting better can be really paradoxical. The things that actually trigger recovery can be completely surprising.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. We should probably be talking about an illness recovery process. You see, they're not separate. From the very start, the act of being ill is also the body and mind trying to recover, trying to find a new balance. They're basically two sides of the same coin, happening at the same time.
And if you want an incredible, real-world example of that paradox, look at this. During the German invasion of France in World War II, a psychiatric hospital had to be evacuated. In all the chaos, 153 patients who were classified as incurable just escaped. Years later, a government commission actually tracked them down and found that an astonishing 37% of them had simply re-established themselves in communities. They had, for all intents and purposes, recovered. A crisis, a terrible event, is what actually kick-started their path back to health. Wild, right? And this isn't just some one-off thing. History is full of these kinds of paradoxical cures. You've got stories of patients who suddenly got better right after being told their case was hopeless, others who recovered after moving to a less intense hospital. There were even waves of mental improvement seen during the 1918 flu pandemic. It seems like sometimes the catalyst for getting better is the very last thing you'd ever expect. So this brings us to what might be the most complicated idea of all. If recovery is the norm, and it can be triggered by all these strange events, why do some people stay sick? Well, the answer might lie in these hidden forces inside us that can actually fight against getting well. It's a deeply uncomfortable question to even think about, isn't it? We just assume that everyone, everywhere, wants to be healthy. But what if there's a part of a person, often a part they're not even aware of, that finds reasons to hold on to the illness? Sigmund Freud actually had a name for this. He called it resistance. He described it as this force inside a patient that actively fights against changing for the better. It's a force that works against the very doctor who's trying to help them. It's this fundamental conflict happening within a person. And Freud broke this down into 5 different types. You have repression resistance, which is basically the ego's automatic habit of just blocking out painful thoughts. There's transference resistance, which is about feeling resentful toward your therapist. Then epernosic gain, that's a reluctance to give up the so-called benefits of being sick, like avoiding responsibility. There's repetition compulsion, which is this unconscious pull to repeat old self-destructive patterns. And finally, superego resistance, a deep-seated feeling that you somehow deserve to suffer.
So, when you put all of these pieces together, you start to see that mental health isn't some simple on or off switch. It's dynamic, it's a constant balancing act, a battle that's never truly decided.
Think of it like this. On one side, you have all the forces pushing for recovery. Things like resilience, hope, human connection, good treatment. But on the other side, you've got forces pushing against it. That internal resistance we just talked about, a fear of change, and those unconscious self-destructive patterns. The direction an illness takes really just depends on which side has the upper hand at any given moment. You know, the philosopher Schelling has this quote that just sums it up perfectly. Health isn't about winning some final victory. It's about the ability to maintain this balance, to keep engaging in this continuous, never-decided battle between the forces pulling you toward growth and the forces pulling you back. So, we'll leave you with this question. If you look at mental health this way, it kind of removes all the stigma and judgment, right? Illness isn't a personal failure, and recovery isn't some miracle. It's just the expected outcome of a really complex, dynamic process. So if we think about it like that, what does it really tell us about the incredible and often paradoxical nature of human resilience?